I just got back from the Blues' optional practice, and it was really interesting what the players themselves had to say about this team and this road trip. This is all coming up here on Locked On Blues.
You're Locked On Blues, your daily podcast on the St. Louis Blues. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And a happy Wednesday, October 30th. I am your host of Locked On Blues, Haley Taylor Simon, talking to you about all things about the Blues here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today on Locked On Blues, it's all about the Blues. A lot of players on the Blues that I spoke to, practice, what I observed at practice, and of course, the Philadelphia Flyers tomorrow and what to expect in that type of matchup. We have a lot to get into on today's episode. I'm going to be very honest. I was at the ring for hours on end, and I feel like I just have absorbed so much information from these guys, and I just cannot wait to tell you about what they said to me. But you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Hi. As many of you know, this is my big hockey day, and in this case, days, because the St. Louis Blues had an optional skate today here in Philadelphia. Now, not all the players were required to go. However, all the players ended up going. So I just want to put that out there. And I was really impressed with practice, and I cannot wait to talk to you about what I saw at practice. However, I want to talk about the Blues. And by that, I want to talk about this team. You know, I asked maybe 8 different players questions. I asked, Brayden Schenn, Perunovich, Neighbours, Bolduc, Hofer, Walker. I asked a lot of players questions, probably some more. I saw Holloway, but I'll probably get to him tomorrow. The point is, I really wanted to know, especially from the guys themselves, what is the identity of this team? And Jordan Kyrou said it to me best. They have an identity. They know their identity. He didn't share their identity, which I didn't expect him to. But I wanted to, that was my question. Do you know your team's identity this season? And Kyrou, he was very upset about the past 2 games. He told me, he said, I was unhappy with how we played in Montreal and how we played in Ottawa. And I think that for a player like Jordan Kyrou, he is so focused, right, on, what's next. He is so focused on winning. And that's his mentality, is how can I win? How can I play better? And I think for a player like Jordan Kyrou, a lot of people, and I don't know why, they kind of underestimate him. They underestimate his abilities, his drive even. But that is the most focused player ever. He's one of the nicest people, but also one of the most focused people. Playing Philadelphia tomorrow, he wants to get back on that win column, obviously. However, it's just one of those things where he just wants to move on from those past 2 games. He's not going to forget it, but he is upset about what happened. Now, another interesting player that I really enjoyed my conversation with last season was Zachary Bolduc. And remember, he scored his first goal on his 21st birthday last year. And, I said to Zach, I'm like, hey, you basically made the team opening day. I know he was like Springfield and that whole thing happened, but essentially, yeah. And he said that that was his goal. And I said to him, you have a GM, as in Doug Armstrong, who said before training camp that you could be a top 6 player. Did you hear that? How did that impact you? And he said that it's really nice having somebody as in a GM, having that amount of trust and, trust in you. And I think for a player like Zachary Bolduc, he is such a hungry guy. He said to me today that he wants to score more, because we're talking about things that, we saw on the ice from him, right? And I said, you're good at scoring, you're good at setting up plays, but that's where you excel the most, is when you're able to take a slap shot, right? And he says that he wants to continue that. He also talked to me a little bit about Toronto. And this is something I asked Coach Bannister today after practice, because it doesn't make sense to me. The Blues suffered 2 losses, a 5-2 loss to the Canadiens, and then a 7-1 loss last night to the Ottawa Senators. Ugly losses, okay? Like ugly, like Hofer had to be pulled in the second frame. Ugly, ugly, ugly. However, I thought to myself, Was it because the players that played under Coach Bannister, I mean, not under Bannister, under Coach Berube, had so much emotion going into this game? Like, was there just like this sense of, oh, well, Toronto's also a really challenging team? Like, I don't necessarily know what was going on, but I feel like a lot of the focus on this road trip was put on the Toronto Maple Leafs. And because Zachary Bolduc, he never played under Coach Berube. I mean, yes, he saw him at camps and things like that. He never was a player that, was coached by him. I was curious and I said, I'm just trying to figure out why there's such a disconnect, you know. And he told me, he said maybe for some of the guys, but he said that I think that they just went in with Toronto being the challenging game. And that makes sense. I mean, Zach gave me as much insight as you could give somebody. I mean, I don't necessarily think that the guys intentionally were like, oh, yeah, let's focus on Toronto, no other game in this road trip. However, it just made me kind of question, okay, well, and Jordan Kyrou said this to me too. The Senators are not that great of a team, and neither are the Canadians, but yet they got crushed by them. And that's what Kyrou was. And I know I'm flipping back and forth between players. It was a lot today. But that was one thing that Kyrou really said to me that bothered him. It wasn't the fact that they lost, because we talked about, they almost won against the VGK in Winnipeg. It was who they lost to. And I'm going to preview that in my Flyers segment at the end of this episode. Another player who is probably one of my favorites on the team. You know him as hashtag Captain Brayden Schenn. I spoke to him today. He remembered this podcast, by the way, which I thought was cool. And he also filmed a little bit of a soundbite for me to use in my intro. But I personally think two things from Brayden Schenn. One, I asked about Robert Thomas, and I said, Coach Bannister said that there's no more individual playing, that, Tomer is out. And, he said to me that the team has been playing, all right. I mean, they did have one win out of the 3 games that they played since Thomas has been out. So he's like, it wasn't like that great. But I said to, Brayden Schenn, you played a handful of games. You still have time. The season, just began. What is your message to this team right now? And essentially, he told me is that you just have to go out there and battle and remember that playoffs are the priority. And I can't tell you how refreshing that is to hear. I think that, it's easy to say, oh, yeah, let's just go out and win. But having that bigger picture in mind of going to the playoffs is crucial and vital to this team and their success. I mean, you don't want to go 3 consecutive seasons without going to the playoffs. I think every single player knows that. Now, don't worry. I will be doing episodes where I talk more about some of the evergreen things that they told me. I'm just kind of focusing on the most relevant stuff. Scott Perunovich, I spoke to him today. I told him, I said, listen, I'm a fan of you. I like you on the power. Well, not a fan of you. I said, I'm a fan of when you're on the power play. Okay. Let's not get it twisted. I'm a fan of when you're on the power play, right? You see him doing that at practices, things like that, right? I'm like, tell me what's going on here? What's, the disconnect? And he says that he wants everyone to know. I mean, not everyone to know, but he wants, it to be known that, he's working hard. He says that he has a lot to offer and that he hopes that they see that. I feel bad for him. And not in a sense of anything other than just, I would rather him get minutes than not playing at all, right? I spoke to Joel Hofer today because last time I spoke to Jordan Binnington, and I was like, you know what? It would be really cool to bring up something to Joel Hofer that Binner brought up to me last time. And remember last time when I interviewed Binnington, I can't even speak. I said Binnington. He talked to me a lot about Joel Hofer and how he sees a lot of potential in him, and he's excited to help him, and he's a great, learner and all that. I said, hey, Joel, last season I interviewed Binnington and he told me all these things about you. What's it like learning from somebody as experienced as Jordan Binnington? And he said to me that there's no other person or player that he would want to learn from and nothing but good things about him. Another thing that I liked about Joel Hofer too, and I've said this, I actually did a crossover with Locked On Flyers. Yeah, he knows that last night's loss happened, but he's just looking towards the next game. And goalies with short term memory in that sense are the most successful, right? So he was very posed about everything. I talked a lot today to some of these guys like Nathan Walker, who I absolutely think is great. He's another one that did a soundbite for the show. Um, However, that audio will come over time. Here's the thing. I spoke to Jake Neighbours. I know what you want. I know you all want to know. He also said that like torts kind of scares him. I'm like, I get it. However, I said there was one question that the people want to know. Again, this was a funny question, and this is where I'm just going to end it on a funny note. Why the hot dog costume? And he told me that because I think like one time the team brought in a bunch of costumes for him to put on, and Schenn basically encouraged him to wear the hot dog, and he kept on encouraging him, so that's why he wore the hot dog costume. Okay, let's get back to focusing. But I wanted to throw that in there because like I did ask some of the guys, like besides like actual like deep like questions, I try to put in a couple evergreen type of things. Um, I don't know, just for fun because again, we talk about this team every day here on this podcast. And, there's going to be the Face the Nations break. And sometimes it's like cool getting to know the players besides just the hockey, right? I like that kind of stuff. Like persons of interest stories is what we call them in journalism. But I'm going to talk to you about my friends over at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in award winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less than 2 players for a shot to win up to $100 cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. You can nail one up to 100 times money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. Just join over the 10 million users that sign up today. Prize Picks now offers Venmo for quick and easy deposits and withdrawals into your account this sports season. Sign up today and get a $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, Prize Picks discount select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. Download the app today and use code Locked On NHL to get up to $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. For instance, you could always do Nathan MacKinnon for more than half a goal, Evander Kane for more than 1.5 hits. You could do then David Pastrnak for more than 2.5 shots on goal, and Sidney Crosby for more than half a point. Again, download the app today and use code Locked On NHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. The Blues had an optional practice today. Everyone went, as I said. However, a couple of the guys that were, a little hurt obviously weren't there. Okay, let's get back to focus. Okay, practice. What did I observe? What did I like? 2 things. One, it was the fact that Kyrou was taking shots on Joel Hofer after practice wrapped up for quite a little while, to be honest with you. I like that. I also saw Suter kind of coaching Kessel. And again, that's what makes Ryan Suter such a valuable player. And, everyone, I just want to address something. Everyone's like, oh, Ryan Suter, he's such a problem in the locker room. Off record, meaning like I wasn't recording it because I didn't have to. Him and I had a lovely conversation about where the best cheesesteak places in Philadelphia are. Like he's actually a nice guy, and I feel like he gets this bad reputation. Here's the thing. Sometimes media, sometimes players, they're not always in a mesh. But as long as you're polite to them, they're polite to you. Okay, so I saw that at practice. They were doing a lot of drills when it came to, honestly rebounding, breakaways, essentially all the things, turnovers, how to, come back from that. They did a lot of drills like that. They did a lot of boards. I mean, man, they did a lot. That practice began at 1. They got on the ice around 1:50. I mean, 12:50, and they didn't get off the ice until like 2 starting at 1:57 to 2:15. Like, there's guys getting off the ice at 2:15, so they were really utilizing their time on the ice. I mean, the amount of drills that they were doing, I mean, 2-on-2s, they did some 3-on-3s, like, they just continued shooting drills, everything. And last night's game against the Ottawa Senators, the Blues did nothing right, okay? Um, like, honestly, they did nothing right. And I know Locked On Senators, we went back and forth, and I like the guys that do the podcast. I told them on Twitter, I said, I have nothing to say because there's no defending how the Blues played last night. You have some of those games sometimes where your team just looks like trash. But I am concerned, though, because Montreal, I mean, they kind of were in it. However, when they play the Wild, it reminded me a lot of the Wild where they just could not gain any possession. And if they did, it was a turnover. But the Blues did work on that. So I'm hoping that that does at least, show in tomorrow's contest. Um, but it does also say something about this team where they did have an optional skate today and the whole team showed up. So that was a plus to me. But I also do like, I mean, they weren't going to do any like crazy things with the lines today. So everything kind of just like looked normal, honestly. Um, However, I think just the drills that they were doing, it reminds me of training camp in a sense, right? Where you kind of run through everything and you just work on what you need to work on the most as a team. And that's why as I said, like there wasn't like any like specific like pairings or lines. It was more so just like drills, if that makes sense. Um, Being said, I was looking at the goalies. Binner looks fine. Joel Hofer looks fine. So that gave me some reassurance after the performance I saw from them last night. But anyways, I think with the defense though, for whatever reason, I really did feel like a lot of guys were looking out for Kessel today. There was a lot of players that went up to him. P.O. even was like helping Kessel with some stuff. I mean, they really do have each other's back on this team, which I like. It was funny at one point, Perunovich accidentally knocked over Saad, and Saad is just sitting on the ice, like cracking up. Like they have fun together, which I do enjoy. Um, I just think that they need to just let that loss go and focus on tomorrow's contest because, well, you know what? Let's do this segment because this is one of my favorite segments I got to do for you a couple times a season, literally only 2 times a season. But before I do that and preview the Philadelphia Flyers game, I'm going to talk to you about FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. The St. Louis Blues play the Philadelphia Flyers tomorrow night, and the Flyers just came off of a 2-0 win, shutting out the Boston Bruins. Meanwhile, the Blues, they just came off of a 7-1 loss against the Ottawa Senators. Both of these teams, and I've said this once and I will say it again, have similarities. The Blues are a better team. The Blues should win tomorrow. Do we know who's going to be in net tomorrow for the Blues? We don't, because in my head, I'm like, maybe give it to Joel Hofer. However, maybe Binner, since he only played like 25 minutes technically. We'll see. The Blues also have Toronto on Saturday. The Philadelphia Flyers are in a rebuild. The Blues are not, right? However, I did mention they have similarities, and we can get into that. I did that actually on the crossover episode. But again, this isn't a team that you can just count out. Last season, the Blues did win on home ice against the Flyers. I mean, not on home ice. They won on the road against the Flyers in a shootout win. It was when Kevin Hayes scored his first goal in who knows how long. I believe the Flyers won on our home ice earlier that season. The point is, it's going to be a big battle. I mean, you don't have Robert Thomas, which, isn't good. However, the Flyers, they do have Matvey Michkov, who does lead the rookies in points so far this season. You don't know who they're going to have in net yet. It could be Sam Ersson, which you probably would hope that it would be Kulisov just because he's only played one NHL game so far, or even Fedotov because he is a player. Actually, no, I don't think Fedotov's going to play. But again, the Flyers, they struggle the most on defense. The Blues, they struggle the most on defense. So it is one of those interesting situations. Now, Philadelphia is without Cam York on defense, who's one of their top defensemen, who is usually paired up with Travis Sanheim. Now, Travis Sanheim is paired up with Rasmus Ristolainen. I mean, it's an all right pairing, and they played well against Boston last night. But again, it's one of those things where, our first pair has been Ryan Suter and Colton Parayko. I mean, it's not like both of these teams have like a star-studded first pairing, right? They have like a really strong player, then with another player that's all right, that can hang out, but isn't like the best of the best, right? Then you think about our stars on, forward, and we have Jordan Kyrou. Now that Thomas is out, you have Jake Neighbours, you have even a Holloway, right? They have a Travis Konechny. They have a Tyson Forster. And Tyson Forster reminds me a lot, actually, of Jake Neighbours in a sense, with just how they play. Konechny and Kyrou remind me a lot of each other, except Jordan Kyrou is fast on the ice and can outskate Konechny without a doubt. You take a look at the captains, because this is interesting. Both of the captains on both of the teams have played in numerous different lines this season. I mean, you look at Sean Couturier, captain of the Philadelphia Flyers, and he played at one, and he's a center, okay, mind you. He was on the fourth line as a winger. Yeah. And then you had Captain Brayden Schenn, who was a winger on the third line. I mean, now he was like centering the first line, centering the second line. Both of these players got moved around quite a bit, but it seems like they both found their spot as a first line center. And I know it just depends on the game because Shenny might be on the second line. However, I do find that to be a little coincidental. Um, Again, I know I compare these two teams quite a bit, but it is interesting for me at least to see how they both react. I mean, yes, you can look at the defense. Do the Blues have a better defense? Yes. I mean, the Flyers, they do have former Blues first round first overall pick, actually, in the 2008 draft, Eric Johnson, so EJ, which I think is the coolest thing ever. However, when I'm looking at the Blues, I'm looking at their defense, they also have a lot of veteran players as well, which is a little bit concerning. I mean, the Flyers, they do have a young guy, as in Jamie Drysdale. Who would I compare Drysdale to? Maybe a Philip Broberg on defense. However, it is one of those situations where I'm like, I don't know, actually, because Philip Broberg is so good offensively. And Jamie, I mean, yes, he has a goal in the season, but I feel like Broberg just excels more offensively than he does defensively. So I guess we will see about that one. Either way, both of these teams are going to be in for a good battle tomorrow night. And a lot of people ask me, they're like, Haley, who do you think is going to win? I don't know. I don't know because I don't think the Flyers are a good team. I think the Blues are a good team. I don't know what's going on with the Blues. I know that they're frustrated and they want to succeed. And I know Philadelphia, they've been frustrated too. I mean, they only have a couple wins this season. So it's not like they have 3 wins this season, Philadelphia. So it's not like they're much better in a sense of a mindset wise because they won last night. They're still one of the worst teams in the National Hockey League. I mean, granted, like they were right above the San Jose Sharks. So like, yeah. So when you put it that way, but the Blues, they can't go into this game thinking it's going to be easy. And Jake Neighbours said it wasn't going to be an easy game tomorrow night. He said to me today that they have Tortorella and he kind of scares him a little bit. So, like, it's not going to be an easy game. But what it is going to be, it's going to be a great contest because whenever the Blues and Flyers play each other, it is honestly some of my favorite hockey to watch. And I can take myself away from being a reporter, right, with everything that I do in general and just watch it neutrally and I'm like, whoa, now this is hockey. This is good hockey. Again, these two teams only face each other twice a season. Now on the 31st of October, and then exactly 1 month on the 30th of November. So, not a lot of time in between. So, when they do play each other, I do really enjoy the game. I'm a little upset. It is at the beginning of the season. I know I saw the guys last season towards almost playoff time. So there's a little bit more energy going on. But it's the beginning of the season. And today was awesome. And it is always such a blessing being able to cover them in person when I have the ability to. And this time I get 2 days to do this in person, just due to the fact that they had that optional practice today instead of just focusing on the morning skate tomorrow, which I did last season. So it is a blues-filled week. I will talk to you tomorrow. And like always, how I end every single episode here, let's go Blues.